Welcome to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week from Aerosmith, the one, the only, bassist extraordinaire, Tom Hamilton. He discusses the band's new DVD called Aerosmith Rocks Donington 2014. This was my third interview with Tom in the last year, so we got a little more into the nitty gritty. We talk about how Janie's Got a Gun came together, Sweet Emotion, Kings and Queens, and Sick as a Dog, all songs that Tom had a part in writing. And of course, joining me to discuss Aerosmith, a man from his own classic rock band, Brittany Fox, Doro, the one, the only, Johnny D. Good day, sir.
Hey man, this is my third co-host with you as well.
There you
So
go. That's right,
the
three for
number
three.
three is going well.
I should only
Thanks for having me again.
absolutely. Since we're talking threes, I probably should invite Peter Criss on here.
Oh yeah,
being his favorite number tattooed to his arm and stuff.
exactly.
We've talked in the last couple of co-hosting spots about the Brittany Fox reunion tour, about heading over to BrittanyFox.com and all that wonderful stuff. Check out Doro. But this time it's Aerosmith. I mean, Aerosmith, right? You must have been a huge fan, as I was growing up in the 70s and 80s.
Absolutely. I don't know how you couldn't have been unless you were living under a rock. I mean, they were, you know, probably the biggest American rock band, at some point during the 70s. And then they had, the whole
Yeah.
reunion and resurgence. And I mean, it's it really is a band with, many lives and many different eras of what, what you have as a fan, like Kiss or something where, you have people that younger folks that are totally into 80s Kiss, and you have the diehards like me that are into the earlier stuff. And even I came in a bit late. I remember when I was a kid that people used to tease me because by the time like Alive came out or something, it was like all the hardcore Kiss heads
Fans.
we're going like whatever. But Aerosmith, just the American Stones, whatever you want to call them, and it was like just part of
You
the
Cinderella, Brittany Fox, and those kind of bands, you had that sort of blues rock or Aerosmith kind of influence to you. Was anybody in Brittany a huge, huge Aerosmith fan? Did you sit down as a band and say, man, we need to sound like that?
um I don't think so. I mean, it was probably more subliminal than
Okay.
than that kind of preconceived thing. But yeah, I mean, it just we all grew up on that stuff, so there was just tons of when you were learning to play, those are the songs you were playing. You know what I mean? So it's when it was kind of our intro to the blues in a bit, in a way like Zeppelin was and stuff like that. I mean, then from that point you would go backwards and check out other stuff. But yeah, they really had the foundations of what rock and roll was really all about.
And you've actually had a chance to see the Aerosmith Rocks Donington 2014, because back in the late winter, early spring, February, March, it was in the cinemas. I didn't get a chance to see it. I don't think it was in Montreal, but where you were, you had a chance to actually go buy a ticket and sit down and watch this thing.
I did. I was, hibernating in the winter time, and I was starting to get cabin fever and looking for movies. And I saw that, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. We'll go
Right.
check it out with a couple friends and just to get the hell out of the house. And it ended up being, like I think it was on IMAX maybe,
Yeah.
and it
I
was
think it
just
was
massive.
IMAX. Yeah.
Yeah, it's massive. It was really cool because
How was it?
you get the festival experience
Of
way,
Donington?
way up close, because I really wouldn't want to be behind, 90,000 people, or it's probably even more than that. I don't know how big Donington is, but it could be even like, 150, 200,000. But to see the band up close and just know that all those people were out there, it was cool, and it sounded good, and they were playing great, and did
The
set list
songs are
was real good.
undeniable. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm looking at the set list now. I mean, they're doing Train Kept Rolling, Last Child, Same Old Song and Dance, Toys in the Attic, No More, No More, Come Together, Dream On. I mean, Mama Kin. I mean,
yeah.
wow, it's just like a night of hit after hit after hit. Um, Growing up back in the 70s, were you more of an Aerosmith Rocks fan or an Aerosmith Toys in the Attic fan, or are they just both two fantastic albums that you just cannot live without?
I would, man, if I had to pick between those two, I mean, they're probably the two best ones overall.
I think so.
Yeah, and I'd go with Rocks. It just has like something extra to it, and maybe it wasn't, because I don't know, Toys in the Attic. That's a tough call, but yeah, Rocks was just ridiculously heavy and just you know, in your face and sounded great. And, I had seen a couple shows
It's tough, huh?
around that time. Yeah.
It's a
But,
tough pick because you look at Toys in the Attic, you have obviously Toys in the Attic, Walk This Way, Sweet Emotion,
mm-hmm.
big 10-inch record,
Right.
Uncle Salty. I mean, wow, wow. And then, but of course, you head
Yeah.
over to Rocks and Rats in the Cellar, Licking a Promise, Combination.
Yeah.
You go Sick as a Dog. You're like, yeah, that's pretty good too.
Yeah. I think Rocks was more of like
A darker.
darker, heavier, but like less commercial, Yeah, I mean, you didn't have like the serious radio play of all those songs you just listed, and like that brought it back to like, yeah, man, they're doing this again, and it's not like, I mean, Big 10 inch is fun and quirky and all that and clever, but it's like you just want to hear them like you know
Rock
just
out.
getting like nobody's fault or something. I mean, it's like, come on, man, this is so heavy. It's like ridiculous, really, really cool.
And just before we head over to the interview, as somebody who's in a rhythm section, as a drummer yourself, how important is it to have a great bassist with you, locked in with you, and how good do you think I was going to say Brad Whitford.
Yeah, Tom.
Tom Hamilton. Sorry, I'm looking at the press release for Aerosmith Rocks Donington, and it goes according to guitarist Brad Whitford.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my eyes got distracted. But
Yeah,
how good is Tom as a bass player?
I think he's excellent. I mean, he's the fact that he's overshadowed so much by you know the
Steven.
Toxic Twins and
Yeah. But him and Joey Kramer, I mean, that is
oh
just a
man,
locked in duo.
it's ridiculous. Both of them are so unique. And Kramer's just another one that's underrated in the
Totally.
big picture, you know what I mean? But
Totally.
never deniable when you see him live or hear him on a record. He's been playing fantastic for so many years. And I think Tom Hamilton has some, real signature licks, and that's like all you could ask for from a bass player in a band of five people where you're trying to get attention, and then you come out with a riff like Sweet Emotion, and it becomes a song, and it's just like one of the
Yeah.
classic Aerosmith songs of all time, and people immediately know that lick, and yeah, you can't deny that at all.
I was telling Tom in the interview, and you'll hear it as we play it, that I said that lick in Sweet Emotion is almost like the smoke on the water for bass players. You sort of
Right,
you have to learn that,
right.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's the one. All right, let's get over to Tom. Before that, let me just remind you that this episode of One on One by Mitch Lafon, One on One with Mitch Lafon, what a day! We're doing too many of these, I think. Is brought to you by the Heavy Montreal Festival taking place August 7th, 8th, and 9th, featuring Korn, Faith No More, Slipknot, Lamb of God, Bullet for My Valentine, and of course my favorites: Warrant, Extreme, Lita Ford, and someday, Doro, Brittany Fox, and
Wow.
and and Johnny D doing an acoustic set. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's gonna happen.
yeah.
you'll you'll be back there.
Should.
Um, hey, let's get over to Tom Hamilton of Aerosmith. Here's Tom. Hello, Tom.
How are you?
Good, good. Always a pleasure to chat with you. Um, so we're talking Aerosmith Rocks Donington 2014. Tell me a little bit about that concert experience. What makes the Donington show in particular worthy of a DVD release or a Blu-ray release?
Well, it's a festival that's been going on over there for years.
Right.
They've had different names for it. It's located at an old racetrack called Donington Park, and they used to call it the Monsters of Rock. Now they call it the Download Festival, and whatever they call it, it's an honor to be asked to headline it. Because it's really has a big place in people's hearts who love to rock out.
Right.
And it's a really hearty audience. I mean, like some of the other festivals in Britain, you get these rainstorms and people just they just live in the mud for 3 days, and that's pretty much what happened. Although there's this miraculous thing that happens, it seems like it always rains and pours the day that we're supposed to go on, and then stops like right beforehand. And it's so funny because that used to happen when Joe and I used to have our bands when we were high school kids.
Right.
It was so funny. There were so many shows where it would pour, and then when it was time for us to play, it would stop raining. So I don't know. Maybe there's somebody up there watching out for us, or
They cleanse the people before you come on.
What?
I said they cleanse the audience before you come on. They make sure they're
yeah, really. At least down to their feet. Yeah, by the time we went on this last time, I mean that audience was funky. They were first of all, it was really moving that they all stayed.
Right.
And second of all, they just stunk to high heaven. It was unbelievable. We have this ramp that goes out into the crowd, so we can kind of get out there from the stage. And when we go down to the end of that ramp, man, the smell was overpowering, but it was very moving because everybody was having such a fun time, the band and the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. The band is currently on tour, and then you're off the road by the end of August or the middle of August. Do you start work on the follow-up to Other Dimension or Music from Another Dimension, or what is the plans for the rest of 2015?
Well, we're more talking about more touring for next year.
Okay.
But we are also, sort of talking about some of the aspects of another Aerosmith album, and there's some possibilities in terms of that project or that possible project that are very exciting, and I just don't know the timing of when we get back into it, but I can't imagine it not happening. I mean, I'm going to keep pushing for it, and I'd like to take what we learned from the Music from Another Dimension album and go in and do a really concise, tight Aerosmith rock album. I think that that everybody had something that they wanted to say on that last album. It had been 10 years since we made a record, and some of us have just been working and working to try to make it happen and come up with material and reach new goals. And now that we did that project, it would be nice to go in and really do the coup de grace with a really great rock album.
Yeah, I'd love to see you get back to sort of that Done with Mirrors, Permanent Vacation kind of vibe. Those were great days. Steven Tyler has a country album coming out. Brad Whitford is going to go and do a Whitford St. Holmes. In the 80s, Joe left, Brad left. You've been there all along. You never strayed. You've never done outside projects. Is there a reason why you've never done an outside project? And is that something that interests you and that you'd like to explore?
It never did before. What always has been an obsession for me was to be more involved in the writing of an Aerosmith album,
Right.
and you know, um, so I really looked inward. I really just went up to my studio every day and forced myself to learn A, how to use the recording software, B, how to write lyrics, C, how to sing at least well enough where I can make a demo of a song idea. And that was that was sort of my own little private world there. I was able to accomplish that on the Music from Another Dimension album with a couple of songs.
Yep. Yeah. In
But
fact,
I do have a pile of music that I've been working on. A lot of it is finished. I have to think about the big thing about me doing my own album is who the hell is going to sing it.
right.
I had cancer a couple of times a few years ago, so
Yep.
I don't have the best singing voice left, and I was never a singer before. But I don't know. I have some friends that are really very supportive of the idea of me doing something like that. So you never know. We're Aerosmith doesn't have a record deal. Any of us can really do anything we want.
Right.
This is a time in history where you don't have to do a whole album. I mean, I still like the concept of an album as being a way to present what you're thinking about musically. But
Right.
You can do EPs or you can even do single songs. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I have to do something with this material because I know it's good, and I know I like it, and I'm dying to see what other people would think.
We've spoken twice over the last year, and we've gone over a lot of the history. So I wanted to focus on a couple of more things that are a little more specific, and it is your songwriting. You have written, for me, 5 incredibly important songs for Aerosmith. I mean, you've written more than 5, but there are 5 that really, really stand out to me. If you don't mind, I'll just want to ask you about them, what you were thinking, and how they fit into the albums that they were on, and the importance of them. I'll start off with Kings and Queens from Draw the Line. How did you come up with that, or how did the guys and you come up with that? And just tell me a little bit about the song.
Well, it brings me back to when we were doing the pre-production for that album, which, is when you take all the song ideas and you work away day after day after day, turning them into basic tracks that you can then write vocals over. We had a lot of time where Joey and Brad and I would sort of get to the studio with Jack, our producer,
Jack Douglas,
at noon or 1 in the afternoon, which is when we were supposed to be there, and Joe and Stephen would show up sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So we just started working away and trying to come up with stuff. Just that that little 3 of us with Jack, and that was an example, like Kings and Queens. We just were coming from a place of what has inspired us in the past, which pretty much boils down to any given Led Zeppelin album. Just the dream of being able to get together with your friends and play something that might resemble in any way, a Zeppelin song or a Who song or
right,
something from that Big Bang era. It's a dream, and it comes out when you're just in there playing your instrument. So we would just jam, and Brad is a very creative guitar player. Something would pop out of his head, and we would learn it and work on it, and then that would give somebody else an idea. And so we just had those chord changes and that basic arrangement. We put it together and we recorded it, and we had no idea whether that would wind up being finished or not. But luckily, that was one of the songs that got finished on that album.
Yeah, it turned out great. Draw the Line, many critics at the time said it was a bit of a letdown after Rocks. I disagree with that. I think it's a great album. How do you look back on Draw the Line and that era? Because the band was, I don't want to say confused, but there were a lot of things going on within the band at the time.
Yeah, that's it's funny because that album was a really tough time in our history. It was really frustrating,
Right.
and there was just a lot of bad behavior going on around then. But something that I have noticed over the years is that that album has a following.
Yeah.
And you constantly see people with T-shirts on that have the art from that album cover. So I kind of chuckle a little bit when I hear that, because when I think back about that album, I think about how really difficult emotionally that was to get that damn album done.
Yeah.
And we would go down and work on that album, and then we'd take a break, and I go home and tell all my friends that the album was going to be done in about a month or so, and then 6 months would go by, and it was just when the band, we all started making a lot of money, and we could afford our Ferraris and our drugs and our houses, and we could go and isolate from each other and involve ourselves in stuff that was not about the musical progress of the band. And so yeah, that was a tough album. And sometimes when I judge an Aerosmith album, I tend to judge it according to how much fun it was to make it. But I have to remember there are some good songs on that record, as you're pointing out. And
Milk
there
Cow
are a lot
Blues.
of people who really dig it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it maybe after Rocks, as a fan back then, you go, oh, it's not Rocks. But in 2015, you look back at it and you go, wow, Sight for Sore Eyes, Milk Cow Blues. Damn, it's a great album.
Yeah, it is. But then there's some songs on there. I think about the lyrics, going round, going downtown, looking for some ground around, or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, just some lyrics that are so nonsensical. They're funny, and when those songs got done, I loved them all. That's the way you always are when you finish a record.
Right.
You think it's the best thing you've ever done, and then it takes months and months before you really can look back on it. But yeah, I mean, there's some great stuff on there for sure.
Absolutely.
But after Rocks, I was really worried about what was happening in the band at that point.
Now speaking about worry, on the Aerosmith Rocks Donington 2014, you've got Janie's Got a Gun. From the Pump album, you come off Permanent Vacation. You've had Guns N' Roses open for you. You've had Dokken open for you. The album is going crazy all over MTV. What was the pressure like for you and the band to write the follow-up, which was Pump? And then you're involved in one of the biggest songs on the album. So if you can't talk a little bit about the album and the song.
Yeah, well, we had a really successful collaboration with Bruce Fairbairn on the Permanent Vacation album. So, I think that, once the decision was made, and it was made very early on, that we were going to do another album with Bruce, there was a lot of ways that in my head I could relax, because Bruce was a very strong coach type personality. He was a kind of a good ass kicker, and when you look at our albums, the best albums we've made are when we had a producer that could really be a coach, and sometimes a tough coach. So knowing that we were going to go do another album with Bruce, I think personally gave me a lot of confidence, and it also made me really yearn to be involved in the writing on that album. Now, you got to remember, back at that point, we had decided to make our best albums. We might need to look outside for people to collaborate with to do some of the writing, and it was a controversial decision, obviously. But it also created a situation within the band where there was even more competition to get your legs in. It was always competitive within the band, and now you had the competition within the band, and you had, these professionals. I came into that first meeting that we always used to have before we would make an album, where everybody brought in their rough ideas, and I came in with a song idea that had this really interesting chord change in the intro, and it didn't turn into something where the band worked up the whole song, but Stephen kind of, without telling me about it or anybody, kind of went off by himself and started learning it on keyboards and playing it, and it led to all the other parts that led to Janie's Got a Gun. To me, that's a Steven Tyler song. You know, I'm proud to have been involved in terms of that, the sort of some of the seeds that were planted, but boy, that's really something that he brought in, and you know, it's a really good Steven song. That's how I look at it.
You mentioned Outside Riders, and I did have a couple more songs I wanted to ask you about, but you brought in Outside Riders, and it worked like gangbusters on Permanent Vacation and Pump. By the time you got to Just Push Play, that magic seemed to sort of wane a bit. If you go in and follow up Dimension in the next year or two, do you want it just to be the five guys, or do you want to go back and say, okay, let's go get, you know, Desmond Child or Holly or whoever? What would you like to do for the next album in terms of the songwriting?
Well, before I say that, I just want to point out that all that work that we did with people outside the band was collaborations. There was maybe one or two songs that were sort of written that we said, okay, that's a done song. We learned it and recorded it.
Right.
But otherwise, they were all collaborations, and so Aerosmith fans don't need to worry that, you know, we had a situation where a bunch of professional songwriters came in with a blackboard and told us what to play. As far as going forward, you know, I don't really think about it that much in terms of, do I want this to be something where we can not have any outside songwriters involved? I mean, if it has to happen, like, you know, there's something just happens to get worked up that's so good it's stupid not to record it, we're going to record it. But yeah, I mean, I'm like I was for the Music from Another Dimension album, I'm going to be working my guts out to be able to say something on the album. So that's where I'm coming from.
And if I can, I got you know, those two other songs. I'll start with Sweet Emotion. Your bass part in that is classic. I mean, that's sort of like the smoke on the water for bass players. You have to learn that. I mean, it really is. I mean, I can't think of a better bass part than that. Tell me a little bit about recording that song, how you came up for that bass part, and then just quickly, Toys in the Attic. You know, as good or even better than Rocks. I mean, it's a classic album, and you still play the song all these years later.
Yeah. Well, you know, that whole album just
brilliant.
That one and Rocks represented a pinnacle of our creativity.
Yep.
So it was really, really coming together before the real drug era came in. But you know, I think when we were working on the Get Your Wings album, I remember I had that little bass part in my head, and I think I wrote it up at my parents' house up in New Hampshire, and you know, I used to roll a really tiny little joint and smoke it and go out on the roof of the porch with my guitar and my bass and just play. And you know, something that happens when you play for like 5-10 minutes without stopping, all of a sudden these things start popping out, little ideas, and that little thing just popped out. You know, it felt good to play it. I loved the way it sounded, and it was fun rhythmically to play. And so I kind of brought it in and showed it to Steven, and he was really distracted, and I didn't really get anywhere with it. So between then and the Toys in the Attic album, I basically had to go and come up with the other parts of the song.
Wow.
so that I had an arrangement, and then I had some ideas for guitar parts that went with the bass, because the basic structure of the song was written on the bass. And what happened was, I had that, and but I was really shy about
Right.
getting the band to
Listen to your
sit
stuff.
down and pay attention to me. It was just, I was always very shy about it, and but we had recorded the basic tracks for the Toys album, and we had an extra day. We got them done a day early, and Jack, our producer, said, "Does anybody have a stray idea that we can just jam on or play around with?" And so, I took that opportunity, and just said, "Yeah, I've got this." And I showed everybody the little bass part, and then Jack said, "Okay," and you got everybody to come in and start learning it, and play along with it and jam with it. And then I said, "Oh, I also happen to have this other stuff, which was really the basis of the arrangement of the song." And so we just got together and spent the afternoon, finalizing all the parts and making an arrangement. And by that night or the next day, we had the full arrangement of the song and recorded it. But it wasn't until way after that Stephen wrote his lyrics and his vocal for it. As that's the way it was back then, is that we would do our basics, and because recording was so expensive, as the bass player, my parts were done, so I had to go home.
Right.
We couldn't afford to have everybody hanging around in New York, sitting around while the overdubs were being done or Stephen was singing. So, we would, Brad and Joey and I would go home and pop down to New York here and there to stay in touch with what was going on. But, I just remember, see Joe coming back and see the first tapes we had of the finished songs, and that was the first time I heard Sweet Emotion with those lyrics on it and that vocal. And, I just flipped out. And I knew it was great, but, I wasn't prepared for how well received it was going to be.
What is it? 40 years great, right? At this point? So,
even sometimes he comes up to me and says, "Don't you understand that people know that song by the bass part?"
Absolutely.
And, we both laugh about it, because how many songs that, people recognize because of the bass player, what he did.
And that song, as you were just saying, almost didn't come to be. I mean, it was sort of almost a mistake that it came. You're sort of sitting around when Jack says, "Well, I ain't got anything." I mean, it almost didn't happen.
If Jack Douglas wasn't the guy that we were working with, it probably wouldn't have. He was just
wow,
so great at, getting everybody to have a chance to get their ideas out. And I always thought, well, that's the way it's always going to be, no matter who we work with. But it wasn't.
right.
It was really something that was about Jack and his personality. And he could be tough, and he worked us really hard. But he was also somebody where, if you went and said, "Hey, listen to this, I got an idea. What do you think about it?" He would listen to it.
Well, you certainly can't argue with his success. I mean, the albums that he was involved with are phenomenal. I don't know how much more time we have, so I'll have at least just two more questions if possible.
Okay.
The other song I want to look at was "Sick as a Dog" from Rocks. One of those sort of lost classics. The band plays it sometimes, not as much as I'd love it to come out. How did you come up with that song? And I mean, when you're hearing Rocks coming together and you're hearing all the other songs that Steven and whoever else are bringing in, do you even raise your hand and say, "Hey, look, I've got a song here"? Or how did that one come together?
Well, I think it came together very much the same way that Sweet Emotion came together. Started on my own and came up with some simple chord changes. And, when you listen to the introduction of the song, you hear the guitars playing the chord parts, and then over that there's a very jangly arpeggio guitar part going over it.
Absolutely.
And that's from my inspiration from the Byrds, from back in the 60s.
The Hitchcock movie?
No, the band.
Okay, okay. There you go. Gotcha.
Band from,
I was
yeah.
wondering what the
So,
connection was.
yeah, the Birds. I know people ask me about influences, and I forget to mention them, but they were huge. They had that song, Mr. Tambourine Man.
Uh-huh.
And, Stephen and I both really gorged ourselves on their albums. But anyway, so I had some basic, simple parts. And again, this time it was a little bit easier for me to say, hey, I've got an idea and get everybody to check it out. And so that's the way it happened. And, I still am not a very sophisticated musician, and certainly wasn't back then. But I could come up with a raw idea here and there, and so I came in and I had the basis of the arrangement, and the band just did a insane job with Jack of finishing it off, and it came out really good, and it was fun to record because I got to play guitar, and Joe played bass for most of the song, and Stephen played bass for the end part of the song, and it was just a riot to record it, and yeah, unfortunately, we don't play it very often. It's a tough sell within the band for some reason. I'm not sure about why.
That one and Lord of the Thighs needs to be in every set list. That's just my personal opinion. And I'll finish with this because I know you've been doing these all day. Done with Mirrors was sort of the return of Aerosmith. In fact, that's when Joe came back and Brad came back. I've told you this twice before. I think the album is phenomenal. I love it from top to bottom. But it didn't hit with the music buying public at the time. When you came back with the original band, you've released this album, you've put your blood, sweat, and tears in it, and it didn't go platinum. It didn't top the charts. Was there a moment where you sort of sat back and went, what are we doing here? Do we just go home and call it a day? I mean, what was the feeling?
No, you just, the thing is that, when you finish an album, I might have mentioned this before, just because you finished it, you feel like it's the best thing you ever did. But
it's a great album.
So it was a very slow process watching that album be out there on its own and see the reaction to it. It was baffling to us. Wow, the fans just didn't go for it, and I guess we just felt like, okay, well, that was us just jumping back into the pool after being broken up for 4 years. So let's take a look at it and figure out what we can do better. And so, we took the steps that we took to, jumpstart our creative process and get it going again. Which involved being open to song ideas from outside the band, and but that was a fun album to make. We worked with Teddy Templeman, and we always loved his work. Was that Montrose album, which to me was the first American album that had a production anything as good as a Zeppelin album, and so I think that really was the beginning of American albums having as good a sound as a lot of the British albums. And he was having a huge success with Van Halen, and
great success.
We had a great time. It was a fun record to make.
Oh, absolutely, and I would love to hear more of those songs played live. My Fist, Your Face as a closer would be brilliant. And then
I used to play that one.
Yeah, I've actually been listening to a what's a WBZN or something like that radio show from 1986 that you did. I've been listening to it all week where you play those songs, and the fire that the band had on that performance is unbelievable. I mean, it was just great stuff. And then I'll finish with this. How would you like Aerosmith to be remembered when it's all said and done?
Well, I'd like us to be remembered for flying the banner, of sort of the musical miracle that took place in the late '60s that we learned from. We're kind of like a bridge. If you're a teenager or and you're into rock and you want to go hear a band that kind of represents the way music was presented way back then. We're still doing it, you know.
Yep.
And we've also been able to refine what we do, and you know, we're just very obsessive with how well we can play our songs live in terms of how it compares to the album. So I'd say, you know, like to be remembered as a band that was sort of a product of that era.
Yeah. Great band. Been a fan for so many years, and I'm very much looking forward to the next show. Hopefully you'll come to Montreal or somewhere nearby very soon. Tom, always a pleasure.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
There you have it, folks. My interview with Aerosmith's Tom Hamilton. Their new DVD, Aerosmith Rocks Donington 2014, comes out in September. 80,000 fans showed up to see that. Johnny, have you had a chance to play in front of 80,000?
I have, actually. We've done, I think, Wacken in Germany about, I mean, with me and the band, at least 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
Doro did it, I think, once more. But the first year she did it, it was about 1,000 people. And that was like early 90s. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing. And then soon it was 35,000 and 50,000, 60, 75. And now the thing just sells out immediately before the bands are even announced. And, you know, we're talking like all metal bands. It's not like, I mean, you know, some festivals really mix it up, but to have 90,000 just insane metalheads in the middle of a cow pasture in northern Germany or wherever it may be, Donington as well. I mean, once you get past a couple thousand, it just becomes like
Crazy.
A mass, you know, and you can't even imagine what the hell it looks like from the stage. I mean, the front row is, you know, a mile away.
Yeah.
You know, and you see Ferris wheels in the background and like all kinds of shit flying around and all, and it's like, what is going on? It's so surreal, but you know, we don't do that often. We're not a band like Metallica or Aerosmith that can do those types of gigs, like,
right,
you know, a whole tour of them. But man, it's certainly a thrill to be able to do that even once in your life, you know.
Explain to me the feeling, because I mean, I've been on stage where I've looked out at a crowd. I mean, I wasn't playing, but I've been, you know, and I've seen these crowds, and it just seems that after, you know, 20,000 people, the rest just sort of blends in. You lose track. And is that the same thing with the? I mean, do you get an extra vibe from it? Is it just too big at some point? Is the energy too great? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a totally different feeling from, you know, you're kind of flying blind a bit because you know they're out there, right? You know they're out there unless it's daytime, and you can't really focus on many faces or anything, which is something that you get used to doing in a smaller venue. You know, I might pick up on somebody who's really like having a great time and focus on them for a while and just be like, oh my God, you know, but at a festival like that, it's pretty hard to feel that until maybe you stop a song and you just feel this like tsunami of, you know, just like, wow, you know, it just comes at you like, oh my God, you know? So it's definitely different. It's overwhelming. You kind of have to, you know, try to zone out of it a bit and not think about it too much, because you can really just throw yourself into a, you know, a spaz out. I know I can, because it's like, I don't want to think about how many people are out there right now, but I know this is fucking awesome. I'm just going to try to play the best that I can.
Yeah, you know, in one of the other talk-ups, you talked about how you were sick one day and you had like a bronchitis or something. But when you step in front of 80,000, I think headache, bronchitis, broken leg, it doesn't matter. It's still the best show you're going to do that year.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, you want it to be. It may, you know, depending on what kind of sound you get, because then you have the other unseen or untalked about side, which would be, the fans don't really know what's going on stage. You're at a festival, you don't get any sound check usually if you're,
Nope, you don't.
if you're not the headliner. And because these things are going on all day, they can't exactly be up there. You'll do a line check and then you'll have to hit the stage, and just what you get is what you get. And hopefully, the monitor guy has his shit together, or your crew can get, over there to give him a couple tips
Pointers.
on what you need. And so it's, it's overwhelming, because you're not only, nervous as hell because of the amount of people you're staring at, but you're also trying to get your sound correct on stage, that you can actually enjoy what you're doing. So it's like this vicious circle of stuff going around, swimming in your head. But yeah, I mean, you can't just imagine the feeling, and then you kind of look back at a picture or something, and you're like, holy shit, that actually happened.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think made Wacken so successful? Because you're right, it started off at this sort of extreme metal festival in the backwoods of Germany. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
And now when they talk about quote unquote destination festivals, those festivals that people have to travel to, it's sort of like the number one festival. And that's almost in any genre. People travel to Coachella, people travel to I'm trying to think of some of the other festivals, and Wacken's one of those.
Yeah.
What is it? What do they do?
I think, I mean, as with any successful brand, is really what it's become. It's their branding is unbelievable. I mean, they first of all, you have a couple guys that are totally committed to metal,
Right?
Fans, in the beginning. And as Doro always explains, it's like this stuff was happening right in the middle of grunge, that whole wave. And so these guys were just like, you know what, we're going to have our own festival here, because we're out in the middle of nowhere, and we're just going to do it for the people that are, nearby, and we'll try to spread the word and build it up. And I think dedication, a good idea, a location, this whole village.
You're right about
basically.
location, by the way,
Yeah.
because I don't think this festival works anywhere else in the world. I don't think it works in Australia. I don't think it works in London. I don't think it works in Chicago. I I think when you come to metal as a scene, Germany is sort of the hotbed. I mean, they have been loyal to the Scorpions, loyal to Accept, loyal to Doro, and then loyal to all the other American bands. And
Yeah.
they just are, they just love metal. I mean,
I
Germany just
know.
loves
And
metal.
they love music, man,
Yep.
across the board. I mean, they are,
Yeah, how are they on other
stout.
scenes? Is there like a big blues scene and a big?
Oh God. I
Yeah?
mean, just say live music in Germany thrives because it's, I don't know, they're just way more into it. They want to, experience that live thing. And blues, jazz, pop. They have Schlager, which is like German
Yeah.
kind of silly folk, very, very Candy-esque commercial kind of music, which is a huge, huge market, and these people are just diehard music fans. So it does, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that it would happen here. And, you have a lot of other great festivals, but this one is very unique, because it's strictly metal. And, it's like I said, they've built the brand up to a point where people don't even care who's playing. They're going to Wacken for the experience.
Yeah.
And if some of their favorite bands happen to be playing, that's a bonus,
But you're very right about that. I have friends that fly over from Montreal and Toronto and all kinds of places, and I go, "Oh, who are you going to go see?" And they go, "I don't know. I'm just going to
Yeah.
Wacken." And you go, "What do you
Right.
mean you don't know? You're spending $3,000 on hotel, airplane tickets, and you don't know? Nah, it's Wacken. You just
Right.
go."
Yeah.
And it almost makes me, as a guy who reports on metal and hard rock, almost embarrassed to say that I've never been.
Mm.
I mean, I, I probably should get my ass over there and go at least once, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You should. I mean, it's already reached a point of like, you know, I wouldn't say it's even close to a decline, but it has become one of those places that I've heard fans say that it's just too fucking big. You know, the experience and the whole vibe is so different now that it's like it's too much for them. You know, you kind of like when you have a band that you love and all of a sudden they're like the next big thing and everybody loves them, all of a sudden you're like, I don't fucking dig them as much anymore or
Uh-oh.
whatever.
They've become the Metallica of festivals, right? They
Right, or
sold
whatever.
out.
So you know, you have those kind of people who just basically go away and find smaller festivals that they can vibe with, and then but you have all the residuals that found out about it later or heard so much about it, like you, that would show up there, you know, 27 years into their
Run.
career or whatever it is, and you know, and still get the experience. I mean, you know, just it's
Yeah.
overwhelming, but it's very cool.
You're not a legitimate rock metal reporter unless you've gone. And I haven't gone yet, damn it. So
Well,
I
you
need to
know,
change that. I need to change that.
you're
Speaking
busy.
of
You're a busy man, Mitch.
oh, I'm telling you, non-stop interviews, non-stop. But speaking of festivals, uh, if you want the Canadian version of Vakken, the one that is going to, it is the festival to come to in North America, is of course Heavy Montreal, and this year it is August 7th, 8th, and 9th at Park Jean Drapeau. Corn, Alexis on Fire, Extreme, Arch Enemy, Abath, Testament, Iggy Pop, Faith No More, Slipknot, Lamb of God, Bullet for My Valentine. The list goes on and on and on. Of course, Lita Ford, Warrant, and Dokken are my favorites in there.
Don't forget Extreme. You said Extreme before.
I think I said Extreme, but yeah,
Oh,
Extreme.
did
That,
you?
but you know what? That I gotta say, that is the one I am looking forward to. I gonna be there front and center for Lita, front and center for Warrant, front and center for Dokken and Slipknot and Faith No More and all of that. But I gotta tell you, Extreme is the one that tickles my fancy this year. They're doing all of Porno Graffiti, and the band, you know, since about 1994 exists, doesn't exist, exists for a little
Yeah.
bit, doesn't exist, goes away, plays Boston, goes away, you know, plays Worcester, and you go,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what about us?
Right.
And so yeah, I'm stoked. That's gonna be great. And Gary Sharon, I know he gets a lot of crap for the Van Halen days, which, by the way, I don't think is deserved. The album may not have been that great, but live with Van Halen, he was bloody brilliant. But he's just a great frontman. He just jumps up and down, runs around. He gets people going. So
Yeah.
good to see him on a large stage rather than in a small club. And you know what I'm gonna say. We need Doro on that large stage. We need Brittany Fox on that large stage, and of course the Johnny D acoustic set. You know,
Yeah. That would
what would you
be
do during an acoustic?
bongos. I'd have
Bongos.
bongos mounted on a guitar strap, and I would just go right out in the crowd and just rock out like that.
That would be like a one man band where you
The
tap your toes
hugest, yeah,
with a banjo.
bongo mosh pit, I think you could go for.
Oh, and what songs are you covering? Is it an acoustic Britney set, or are you doing covers of Kiss and REO Speedwagon?
I would do probably, I'd probably get murdered if I didn't do some heavy stuff. So it'd probably be like Metallica, Slayer,
Oh, there you go.
you know,
Yeah,
that
some
type of
Lamb
stuff.
of God,
Exactly,
some
yeah.
Venom, a couple of Venom tunes done acoustically. That'd be pretty good, actually.
I mean, speaking of Wacken, they have a marching band. These guys that dress up in like striped, you know, leotards and shit, and they just walk around all day in the crowd and all over the place playing like covers of the Final Countdown and like you
Like a
know, Motorhead
Papa band.
tunes. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, like
Bum,
a
bum, bum, bum.
yeah. It's like ding 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 ding, you know,
And
with
they do
like
the final.
glockenspiels and you know a flute and a guy with a big bass drum and you
Oh.
know meanwhile they look like you know Spinal Tap guys with their pants stuffed. They've
Now,
got
are they hired by the
armadillos in their
festival?
trousers.
Is that a festival
Yeah,
hire? Okay, so
yeah.
it's not just a bunch of
I
crazy
think they're
fans.
from the Netherlands or Belgium or something, but yeah, they're a favorite. I mean, Wacken definitely isn't afraid to get silly, because they have some silly ass like people playing there on, to keep the entertainment going. Because let's face it, after a couple days of full on metal, you need a little break every now and then.
Yeah, you do, and that's why. First of all, that's why I'm amazed that Vakken is so successful with just the metal thing. I like some of the other festivals, like a Donington or Download, I guess it's called now, um,
Mm-hmm.
and even Heavy Montreal, where Heavy Montreal brings in some punk bands, brings in some glam bands, like the Dawkins and stuff.
Yeah.
Or Download, you'll have Black Veil Brides with Aerosmith, with Metallica, and then some other band that's totally a different genre. I don't know. I think I like more of a broad spectrum than too defined. But listen,
Well, I
Vakken's
was
working.
yeah, I was almost forgetting, but Sweden Rock Festival,
Hmm.
that's you. That's got your name
Yeah,
written all over it. And if you haven't been to that one, I would say
I
you're
know.
really
I know.
just,
I know.
I would go
I'm
to
embarrassed.
Sweden Rock before I would go to Wacken if I were you. I mean, Wacken's cool, but I know your taste in music, and it's like Sweden Rock is just that kind of,
It's it.
yeah, it's everything across the board like that.
And the scene in Sweden of up and coming talent is so fantastic. And I don't know if you know any of these bands, but Eclipse is out of Sweden. They're doing great stuff. The Poodles
Yeah,
are out of Sweden. The band Heat, E dot A H dot E eight, Heat.
right.
Um, Work of Art. There's just a bunch of great melodic rock bands
Yeah, they're
coming
all, I
through.
mean, they have it, they have a little rock
There's
factory going on up there. It's like a 80s resurgence. If everyone says that resurgence is happening, it's definitely happening the most up there.
Sweden,
We've
yeah.
toured with a couple. I mean, Crucified Barbara, they're a
Yeah, I interviewed them
four-stroke
recently.
band. They're
Great band.
they're awesome, man. They're so great. And we toured with Sister Sin a couple times.
Yeah.
Another bunch of great people, great heavy band. The
Is that
list goes on and on and on.
there's Backyard Babies. Are they a Swedish
Right.
band?
Yeah, I
I think they
believe so.
are. There's Ag Sten Nilsson from the band Wigwam, who has a band called Ammunition. They're out of Norway, but he plays with the guys from Eclipse when they do Ammunition. That's another great band. They have an album that came out at the beginning of this year, which is
Yeah.
just fantastic. It's on my top 10 list so far for 2015.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Sweden. You're right. Sweden
Yeah,
Rocks is where I need to go.
I mean, that's where, I think if we're going to go Canadian, I think Triumph did a reunion there,
You
and they
got
did
it.
like 2 gigs in the whole world, and one of them was there.
You
So
got it.
those promoters up there really, are pushing the classic acts, and then all these cool new bands, but they just go, UFO, Doro, Wasp, Kiss,
Ace
Journey. I
Frehley, yeah.
mean, when we played there one year, it was like, I mean, just we played, and then it was like Porcupine Tree after us on that stage, and then Journey headlined, and it was like, you just
See,
can't.
I'm into that. I've been around the festival scene, and people say, "Well, you can't put Journey on the same bill as Metallica, on the same bill as Def Leppard with Styx and with Foreigner
Yeah, yeah,
and with Slipknot." And I go, "Well, why not?
yeah. You can
I mean, isn't the
really.
whole point of a festival to bring in as many people under the tent as possible?"
Right. And while they're playing, if you don't like it, you just walk across the
Yeah,
grounds and you watch another band. I mean, this is the point of festivals, is that, to
uh,
diversify and make, turn you on to stuff that you wouldn't normally be able to see or be into, for example, or
and it
just
gives you
want to
a
chill.
break. Listen, if you're not into Journey, okay, fine. But so that's your time where you go to the bathroom. That's when you go have your supper. That's where you take a little nap. And then when
Mm,
Aerosmith comes on an hour later, you're good to go. I mean,
yeah.
that's how I see it. But
But yeah, you go for the experience, man.
uh,
I mean, Sweden in the summertime, that when that festival's happening, if the weather's good, it's just you will never forget that experience, It stays light out till late at night, and
yeah, sun
you
never goes
know,
down.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. It's good times, you know.
And I learned the hard way about the sun not going down. I was out in Copenhagen with my mom years ago when I was much younger, and they have this place called Tivoli in
Oh
Copenhagen.
yeah, yeah.
And she said, "Oh, okay, well, you can go to Tivoli, blah, blah, blah. Just make sure you're back by 9 o'clock." Well, in the summer in Montreal, the sun goes down at 9. So I didn't, this was pre-cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone to tell me the time. I didn't have a watch with me. I just figured, we'll do like, Daniel Boone or whatever, and we'll look at the sun. And the sun went down, and I got home, and my mom was waiting for me at the door of this place that we were staying at with this incredibly pissed off look on her face. And I said, "What? It's the sun just went down. It's 9 o'clock," and it was 11:30. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
You got your
yeah."
ass whooped,
It's
didn't
like,
you?
"No, I didn't get it whooped," but she said, we're in the northern part of the I got a talking to, and I was like, "Oh. Yeah, I didn't think of that. I thought the sun sort of went down the same everywhere." I mean, listen, how old was I at the time? Maybe 15 or 16 or whatever it was. But yeah, I
There
learned
you
I learned the
go.
hard way that the sun
Right.
doesn't go down.
You travel and you learn things,
Yeah,
Mitch. That's what I've been saying for
key
a
to
long time.
experience.
Yeah.
Johnny, always a pleasure, of course. Check out Johnny at BrittanyFox.com, at BrittanyFox on Twitter. Check me out at Mitch Lafon on Twitter. Anything else we need to add? Other than Tom Hamilton rocks.
I think off the air we're going to talk about your Anton interview.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I have some things to say about that. Shh.
Okay.
Don't tell the folks. Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you, Mitch. It's a pleasure.
As always. Cheers. All right.
Bye.